Hello, dear friends, and welcome to The Natural High, which is, of course, a podcast dedicated to the pursuit of happiness in all its glorious forms. This week, I speak to Lorraine Maguire, who is, among other things, a rapid transformational therapist. Like so many highly successful people, she used the adversity in her life as a springboard to make the requisite changes, not only to improve her own outlook and circumstances, but to help others through their own issues, addictions, and the obstacles to their happiness, fulfilment, and to reaching their potential. She has the sort of self-awareness and self-honesty that I continue to aspire to, and all I can say is that I am already resolved to doing a session with her in order to continue my awareness journey and to relieve some of the pressure points in my own life. The stuff that she talks about during this interview feels genuinely relevant because it's about human beings, the human condition, about our foibles, our common obstacles and challenges, and the adversity which can sometimes hold us back in our lives. This interview gave me genuine food for thought about my own life, and I had a blast chatting with Lorraine because she is a wonderful human. I'm actively trying to reduce my waffle at the start of these podcasts because my guests always do a way better job of describing their work. Suffice to say, you can find her and reach out to her and perhaps even work with her by going to lorrainemaguire.com, LorraineMaguire.com, or by going to thenaturalhighclub.com/Lorraine Maguire. And on that page, you'll find all the links to the great work and therapy that she's doing. As ever, if you enjoy what you're listening to, then please feel free to leave a review for The Natural High on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the show.
The Natural High.
You're over in New Zealand, aren't you?
I am in New Zealand, yes. Whereabouts in America are you?
I'm on the West Coast in California.
Oh, lovely.
I mean, I could say the same thing to you.
Yes, exactly. I've just rushed in. It's a beautiful sunny day out there.
So you're sort of in the summer now, right?
Yeah, we're in the height of our summer and it's wonderful.
Oh my goodness. I want you to tell me something about New Zealand because I met my beloved wife in Australia in 2010 and
nice.
we've both always wanted to go to New Zealand. It seems to me like the sort of understated cool cousin to Australia.
Yes, absolutely. we're way cooler.
Tell me something about New Zealand.
Oh, it's just so beautiful. I think I love the diverse, like where I am in Auckland, I've got the city. So I've got Auckland City, but then I've got two coasts. I've got the East Coast beaches that I just swam at an East Coast beach this morning. And then the West Coast beach is like the surf beach. So, so I can, surf on one side of the coast and it's like literally where I am. It's probably about 40 minutes either way. So I'm kind of like, I've got the best of both worlds. So it's really good. And then you've got like down the South Island, which is like mountains and, ski ranges and things like that, which isn't really my forte, but my partner's going to get me to ski one day. So, yeah. And I think it's just, because we're so far away, there's still, a smaller population. So, I mean, everyone here thinks the traffic's bad and things like that. But, well, if you compared it to America, or I lived in London for a while, it's nothing.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you lived in London. How diverse does New Zealand feel compared to London? That's something, you're sort of working on cliches when you haven't actually been to a place. And it strikes me New Zealand is such a long way from everywhere that it might suffer from a sort of lack of cosmopolitanism in some ways.
Oh, no, like we are so diverse. Yeah, like it's so multicultural, especially in Auckland. And I think that's what I love. And I did actually notice that when I came back from London, it was 2005, that, there is a lot more cultural diversity. I mean, we have so many cultural events, Diwali is celebrated, then you've got the Pacific Island events that we do. You've got a lot of, there's a massive expat community. I mean, I was born in Blackpool.
I know, yeah. I've been listening. It seems to me like you've done more podcasts than me. I've been listening to your podcast over the last few days, and the internet is replete with your podcast, and you speak so well. And I'm hoping to keep this interview fresh for you because I know we're going to be covering some of the same ground. But what happened? How did it come about that you moved over to New Zealand from Blackpool?
Yeah, so my dad's let me get this right. My dad's dad was over here, and my dad's mum passed away when he was young. So it was my dad's dad was here, and his parents, so my grandparents, my great grandparents, because they were my dad's grandparents. So they were writing to mum and dad saying, it's beautiful over here, come over here, come and live in New Zealand. And I believe that my parents had booked to come out here, and then they got pregnant with my brother. And so, yeah, I'm thinking I'm getting this right. They got pregnant with my brother, and then they had me, and then they came out when I was 9 months old. So we eventually immigrated out here. And yeah, I mean, it was just, I think my nana, I call her my nana just was writing all the time saying how amazing it was, and how, what a wonderful lifestyle it was, and how relaxed, and, the weather was so much better. And yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, we came back here. My mum did get homesick when I was about 9, I think, and we moved back to the UK. But I think it was about 9 months before we turned around and came back here again. Yeah. So
I'm going to go back to the start of the chronology, but I'm going to jump around just because of what you've already said. You spent some time in the UK in 2005. What were you doing there?
Yeah, so in 1998, I left New Zealand. I was 21, and I went to the UK. I think really I was doing my OE, but because I had a British passport, I could stay longer than 2 years. So I ended up staying 7 years. So I was kind of like, I'm going to go for a year or two and I'll be back. And then 7 years later. But I think also I was trying to escape the alcohol, the alcoholism, and thinking if I it's New Zealand, and, or whatever I was thinking. I actually don't really even know, but I knew that I was embarrassed about some of my alcoholic behavior. And then I went to the UK, and it didn't change. But
yeah, there's not much else to do in the UK except drink. You went to the wrong place there.
So yeah, so I just carried it on for a few years before I got sober. But yeah, I literally was just, this is the key. Kiwis are huge for doing overseas experience. Maybe it's because we're so far away that we all decide we want to go and see the world. And so, yeah, I literally was like, I seriously, honestly believed I was going to be like a year to 2 years. And it was 7 years that I was, living mainly in London, and around London. I moved around different parts of London. But yeah, and then I did trips from London. But yeah, I mean, I loved it. I think
it's a great place. All jokes aside, it is a great city, isn't
it? Fabulous.
And especially at that age, 21, like the social scene in London is fantastic. And just the layers and the diversity, and it's just such a cultural melting pot, as you've already explained, and just so much going on. I mean, I lived there for 15, 16 years. I eventually got sick of it, but I can't imagine a city that would hold my attention for longer than London did.
No. And I think what was so great was, I miss the different languages. I miss English. I love hearing your English accent, because I miss English accents. I mean, I grew up with my parents from Blackpool, so they've still got their English accents, even after being here for like 44 years almost. And my partner's got an English accent, but I think I'm attracted to English accents, and I used to love sitting in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, just listening to like Wales, the accents are so diverse, like just down the road, and the accent's completely different. Like, yeah, like New Zealand, we sound like New Zealanders. Down south, you're a bit stronger in your Kiwi accent, but I just loved the different accents, and sitting there and just being like, wow. But yeah, I mean, the diversity of London was amazing. And like you say, when I arrived there at 21, I thought I was quite worldly, but I was so naive, and I ended in this house where there was so much partying going on. It just, it literally blew my head off, like I went from, small city, Auckland City, where I'd go clubbing, but it was nothing compared to the massive clubs and things that I went to in London, that just like, I'd be like, how many people are in here? It was completely different.
Just bizarre, random stuff that happens every weekend, and you end up in some crazy place. It's fantastic in itself, though, isn't it? When you look at it retrospectively, and you're not right in the thick of things, it's nice to look back and chuckle at that sort of time of your life, because like the adversity can often be the springboard for your success and for your future strength, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't gone through everything that I've gone through.
Oh my
you
God,
know.
I want to hear your story because you are basically the perfect person for the natural high. Because what I like to do is speak to people who have suffered adversity and then changed their life, and
Yeah.
sort of changed it for the better. And you are just a classic case because it seems to me like
Yeah.
you had lots of common demons that we all have in our lives, but you really sort of got beyond that and became somebody who not only succeeded in your own life, but went on to help so many others.
Yes, yeah, and it was funny. I was just talking to a lady. I've just come from a 12-step meeting, and I was talking to her about something in social media, and I was saying that some of the people in social media that I was in these groups, they didn't want help. They wanted to stay in their sickness, so I stopped. But one of the groups I actually got kicked out of because I was self-promoting or something. But I was actually being honest. But I don't think people realize, like, yes, I have done the alcoholism. Yes, I've done the drugs. Yes, I've done the smoking. Yes, I've done the overeating. Yes, I've done the excess weight. Yes, I've done the anxiety and panic, and it sounds like sometimes like you can't have had all of those things. And I'm like, yes, I have, but that puts me in such a good position to help other people because so many. I mean, I just had a call from a client query the other day, and I just started telling some of the drinking drugging stories, and you could audibly hear him just relax and go, oh, this person knows because they've been there. It's not someone who's going to therapize me and say all these things to me who doesn't actually know what it's like. It's like speaking the same language. And I'm very open about the things that I've done and achieved and overcome because I believe that's my strength today. It's not something I need to. I used to be so embarrassed, and don't tell anyone you're in Alcoholics Anonymous, or don't tell anyone that you've got all of that kind of stuff. And now I'm like, here I am. This is who I am. I've done all those things. I'm not doing it today.
But isn't I just love that honesty. And honestly, the people that I know who have had addiction in their lives, they tend to be and who have come through that, they tend to be some of the most beautifully and brutally honest people I know. They are completely happy to tell you about the depths of their depravity. And I just think that's wonderful because not only is it interesting in itself, it's fascinating, but I just like honesty.
Yeah.
Instead of like trying to sugarcoat the way you are and like paint yourself as this incredible person that's never had any kind of adversity,
Exactly.
I want the warts and all.
Yes, I know. But yeah, I think that one of those where I learned to be this kind of brutally honest, because some people do not like it. Some people back away from it. Because either they're experiencing it themselves, or it triggers them, or they're confronted by it, or it's too much. I did have one friend say to me, "Can you not tell me those stories because they're making me uncomfortable?" Once, and I don't know whether she'd been experiencing those things, but it's like because people don't tend, like, you don't go to the bar and start telling your war stories, But I learned that in the 12-step recovery meetings, we just share it, and then it's become a part of who I am. So, I'll be at swimming telling some kind of story, and you can see people looking at me like, that's not an appropriate story to be telling here, Lorraine. But I always believe that whenever I share something, because sometimes I go, oh, oversharing, Lorraine, don't, that wasn't appropriate time to share the story. I always believe somebody there needed to hear it. And I might never know who that person was, but somebody might have been listening to that and gone, oh, I'm not alone because I've felt those things or experienced those things, or I've had those troubles.
I would have thought that would be one of the big parts of your sort of, of the way that you work, to say to people, look, I have been in your position and way worse. And it's part of that. That is what resonates with a lot of people who are going through addiction and struggling in their life, surely.
Absolutely. I think it's when I'm in like a like when you're just hanging out with mates, or you're all getting changed in the swim change rooms or something. And then all of a sudden I'll tell some story, or something's triggered something for me. And some of the, especially maybe some of the, older ladies will be like, oh, but I just think sometimes these things just pop out of my mouth, and I think, well, somebody must have needed to hear it. And they might not come up to me and say, oh, thank you, but that just might have given them some relief. Because I remember once being in a 12-step meeting, and I was really hanging on, and I was desperate. I wanted a drink. I felt terrible. And everyone in this meeting was saying how wonderful their lives was. And it was a women's meeting, so I was uncomfortable with women at the time. And they'd talk about handbags and boys and things at the beginning of the meeting, and all girly things. And I'd feel like,
no wonder you wanted a drink.
I just wanted to be a boy at that point, like I'm quite action oriented. And so it was a challenge for me even to be there. And so I sat there and I didn't share, I didn't open my mouth. And we all used to go for coffee and dinner afterwards. And so I went and I started sharing, and I think I might've been crying, saying, oh, it was really hard. And then this other girl said, oh my God, yeah, I felt the same too. And then this other girl, and this one woman, I'll never forget it. She said, if one of you had shared how you were struggling in that meeting, you would have helped the other two. But you all kept quiet, and you don't know who else was in that meeting who needed to hear that life isn't always beautiful, happy, sober. That life is hard when you're first getting sober, that it's a struggle. And I always remember that woman. I don't remember her name, but I just remember that conversation. And I always remembered that. And I thought, sometimes when I, like my ego will be like, oh, you're 20 years sober. You can't say you're having a hard time or anything like that. And then I go, yeah, but we're human too. We don't get to this place where everything's like, oh, I've made it. I'm never going to have another problem ever again, which I would love to get to, but I don't believe that's possible.
I was going to ask you about ego straight away after that because of what you're talking about. I thought how much of it is to do with pride, that we don't want to talk about the darker sides of ourselves. We don't want to project that onto other people. We want to present ourselves as, fully baked and, a stand-up, reliable person with nothing bad going on.
That's exactly right. And that's probably been one of the biggest challenges transforming into becoming a therapist, because aren't you supposed to be fully fixed and fully healed as a therapist? And I've found one of my biggest strengths is to say to a client, like I could say to a client, oh, this is just what happened to me yesterday, but this is how I dealt with it. And you might want to try that, or this is what I'm going through, but these are the tools that I've got that are going to help me through it. It doesn't mean that I'm never going to have relationship problems, issues, financial situations, all sorts of things are going to come up. There's, I'm never not going to have an argument with anyone ever again because I'm in therapy, or I've got these tools and things that can help me.
Absolutely. It's a daily practice, right? Happiness.
Yeah.
It's not something like 20 years ago you had all these issues and you don't have them anymore. It's something that you have just managed to succeed, and you've challenged yourself, and you've come out the other end, but it's a daily practice.
Yeah, it's like I say, I'm a work in progress. There's some things that I have overcome 100%. I have no problem with alcohol. I could be around alcohol. I don't want it. There's not any part of me that even an inkling of maybe one day, no, nothing. It's gone. It's completely out of my life. It's no longer an issue. Same with smoking, same with drugs. There's other things, feelings, emotions, relationships that still bring challenges that I need to work on. Even over this Christmas period, I got a little bit out of my, mental health routine. I wasn't doing my readings that I read, regular readings, and wasn't meditating as often, and even exercise. And I noticed that, I need that routine. That's what keeps me in a balanced place so that I can go out into the world and feel good.
Absolutely. There's another specific question I had for you. How important is routine in your life in terms of, maintaining your happiness and sense of contentment and fulfillment? Yeah, is it really important? If you drop off from a couple of little things here and there, do you find yourself sort of slipping back into a less sort of fulfilled and harmonious existence?
I can let go of a couple of things, but it's when there's a build up of more. So one of my nicknames years ago was Lorrainal, because I can be quite anal. And when my partner first met me years ago, he knew the robot Lorraine, because I was, he calls me now a robot with feelings, because I've still got the robotic kind of Excel spreadsheet planning.
You're organized.
I was an organized project manager. So I've still got those skills, but I didn't have the feelings attached to it. Now I'm like, whoa, feelings. Oh, yeah, they come and go, don't they? And so I was just very much regimented. And so I have a spreadsheet, which I call my habit checker. And there's all sorts of things on there, like making the bed, flossing my teeth, things, because I wasn't historically very good at making my bed every day. And so, things like that. Some things get a tick every single day. Other things get ticks like once or twice a week, maybe once a week, sometimes less than. Some things I've never had ticks on. I just haven't managed to get that habit going yet. But still there, because I'm like, I actually would like that habit. Drinking water, tick every day, 2 liters of water.
When you say drinking water, tick every day, do you literally have a spreadsheet of things that you want to do each day? You want to tick off the list? Wow, that's awesome.
And I have it. I was like, oh, I've left it at my partner's, but so I've got like it's like a little daily plan now, which I've only just started, which I'm really loving. I got that from another woman. That's like, what's my nutrition for the day? What's my exercise? What's my home life? What's my work life? Gratitude. And so I can do that. I start it in the morning and I do a little rough plan, but if I don't stick to it, I don't beat myself up anymore. I just go, that's okay. I didn't stick to my plan. Like I used to be like, I have to stick to this plan. And if I don't stick to this plan, I'm going to drink or I'm going to drug or I'm going to eat or, I can be a lot more flexible now. I can go for a few days, but if it compounds and I start to notice, I look at this and I go, what have I not been ticking? What have I not been doing? Part of me knows I don't actually need the tick sheet anymore because it's a lot of these things are ingrained, but another part of me really likes it, like the little girl from school with the star chart. Oh, I got a star today. That's how I feel. Like there's a lot of these apps you can do it online. I love printing it off, ticking, writing in the boxes. Who did I, like one of my things when I went from a corporate job to working for myself, office of 150 plus people on my floor to me in my house. One of the things I said is I have to have face-to-face or phone contact with someone. And so I notice if I haven't written someone's name in the box for a few days and I haven't had any phone or face-to-face contact, I need that. That's something that I need.
Do you think we all do?
I do. I think connection is so important. If I don't get enough connection, that's one of the things that I missed over the summer period and with lockdowns and all sorts of things, I was like, this week I've had a walk with 2 friends. I've swum with a friend. I've swum this morning. I've been to a meeting. I'm like, connection. I feel good. It's important.
What are the single most important? I mean, it's probably hard to give you an exact answer to this, but what are some of the most important things that you do for your physical and emotional health every day?
So for me, because I'm a hypnotherapist, I like to do my hypnosis recordings. So
what are they?
So basically, I believe that all the things that we're experiencing, somewhere in our mind, we've created it. We've got a subconscious belief. And so the hypnotic recordings rewire your subconscious mind. So I had the belief, I'm not enough. So for a while I had a recording that just told me you are enough, you are worthy, you are lovable, so, positive affirmation type recordings, but it's, you put yourself into hypnosis. I listen to them as I go to sleep. Sometimes I'll listen to one when I wake up in the morning. So I find them really useful. Sometimes I'll listen to one it's like listening to a podcast, but it's either one of my therapists has done it for me or I've made myself one.
And it's quite meditative in that respect, in that sort of repetitive respect.
Yes. Yeah. And so I find them really, really helpful because it's getting through the conscious and into the subconscious. So I fall asleep to them a lot, but I've had some crazy as dreams where my recording's been playing in my dreams. It's quite funny. So I think that's really important for me. I don't do daily exercise, but I like to move daily because, sitting at computers and things and doing a lot of online work or sitting with a client, I like to move my body. So for me, I used to be a couch potato, and now if I go a few days without either bouncing on a trampoline, swimming, doing some
dancing in the dark.
Dancing in the dark, exactly. Bring on dancing in the dark. We're not dancing at the moment because it's too light.
What's the distinction between dancing in the light and dancing in the dark? What's the difference? Is it just you have less inhibition because you're in the dark, or what's the benefit of it?
So for me, I don't have much inhibition dancing. I can dance in the light or the dark. I think
you're in the minority there.
Yeah, I can dance on a stage. I love to dance. Brilliant. But for a lot of people, yes, you can dance. Like, honestly, I'm ripping out a routine as if I'm on stage with people watching and that no one can see you. And I probably wouldn't do some of the things that I do in the dark. And, as much as I love to dance, there are probably some things I do in the dark that I wouldn't do if people were watching me. Not many, but a few. But I think for me, what it is when I'm in the dark, all my other senses are switched off. So I'm not distracted by how someone else is dancing. I'm not distracted by someone talking to me. I'm just present. It's like meditation. I'm present in the moment. And what happens to me is I become very mindful of what's going on for me, because I'm either really in the music, dancing and really feeling it, singing along if there's words, or really getting into the beat and I'm present with the music, or I notice my head is racing. I might be having a argument with someone in my head, or thinking about that client that didn't go well or something, and I realize, oh, I'm really distracting myself here, and I can get a sense of what's going on for me. And then I can kind of work through some of those things in the dark, sometimes I can just be aware of it and then go, okay, I'm aware of where I'm at. And then just as the dancing progresses, I tend to let it go. And then the lights come on and I'm like, I feel better.
Sounds beautiful. It's something I
Mm.
will definitely give a go.
Oh, it's so good. It is so good. I mean, I'm hanging out for March the 4th or 5th or whenever it is that we start back up, it's definitely something I miss. But I will, this week, I just threw on some tunes and danced by myself in my living room for 30 minutes because I needed to move my body. So I'll do it anyway, but it is a lot better because in the dark, you've got woohoo, yee woohoo going on. And, I'm very vocal. I woohoo a lot. Everyone knows where I am when I'm in the dark. So, it's just this release of energy, and you're feeling the vibe of everyone around you as well. And it's so uplifting.
And I think so many of us are so inhibited. I'm sure lots of your clients, you're working with their inhibitions a lot of the time, right?
Yes.
And it is something, I like the idea that ultimately there are only two main emotions, love and fear. And you pretty much can put everything into those when you think about it, like the fear, the subcategory of that is anger and,
Yeah.
repressed resentment and all these sorts of things. But, you're sort of working with those things with inhibitions, aren't you, a lot of the time? Like you're dealing with people with a lot of fear and you're trying to bring the love back into their life.
Exactly. And one of the things that we do, one of the things I do in a session is there's a technique called loving parent, where you become your own loving parent, and you might have a memory of yourself as 5, and, instead of going, oh, when I was 5, this happened and that happened, and it's like, love that 5-year-old. What did that 5-year-old need to hear? Like if I think of one of the clients this week, she'd done an assignment and nobody recognized the assignment. She didn't get chosen best, and she was like, oh, I'm not good enough, my work's not good enough, I tried really hard and I've got no praise. And I get her to praise herself, to love herself, even if it doesn't come from anyone else. You have to say, I did a good job, and well done, and give yourself that love that, people around you, they might think it and feel it, but might not be able to express it. Not because you don't deserve it, but because of whatever's going on for them. So, being your own loving parent, cheerleader, your own guide, your own mentor, your own sponsor, and teaching clients to do that, because we beat ourselves up. I mean, I beat myself up for years and years, and I don't say that I don't do it anymore, because I do still have times when I do, and then I'm like, oh, and I try and stop and get into that loving place. But yeah, like you say, it's normally when there's kind of fear there, or anger or hurt, that something's caused that kind of behavior to come back up.
Well, I think it's so important that you're aware of the fact that you have these peaks and troughs in your life, because almost it makes you more accessible as a therapist. I think if you we've already touched upon it, but if you sort of went into all of these meetings like, oh, look at me, look how amazing I am, look how perfect everything is in my life now, that's just not accessible. Whereas if you explain to people, we all have all of these feelings, and it's about managing them, and it's about the daily practice of loving ourselves. That's just so big. And I mean, you're such an interesting person, and you're a very warm person. I love it. I love speaking to you. So many questions, but I want to ask you about the start of it all, the addiction, and how bad was that? When you look back at it now, how bad was it in comparison, in the context of other people? Were you a serious alcoholic? Were you a serious addict? Or do you think it was just something which you didn't like, and you're like a bad habit which you wanted to change? I mean, how bad did it get? You went to AA, obviously, and that gave you a platform to start exploring the. So I want to ask about that, and also, was there a moment of enlightenment, or did it happen over time?
Yeah, so for me, yeah, great. Yeah, good, yeah, great way of wording that, actually. So if I compare myself with some of the alcoholic behavior, if you had it on a spectrum, I'd probably somewhere be in the middle of the road, because I didn't drink every day. I didn't drink at work. I didn't crash cars. I didn't, get into violent fights and things like that. But I was in the middle of the spectrum because I was what you would term a blackout drinker. So I would drink to not passing out, where you fall asleep or fall over and pass out. I would black out. So walking, talking, dancing, shagging, all sorts of behavior, no memory. And it's honestly terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, so I came to in situations where I was like, I don't like, I've got a few really funny stories. Like I've got one where I came to with my feet on the couch and I was sitting on the back of the couch, on the arm of the couch, and my hands were out. And, like I'm telling a story, like I'm doing, if you could see me now, my hands would be out.
Yeah.
And I had this room of people looking at me and laughing. And I was like, where have I come from?
Wow. That
And they
must
were
have been
like,
scary.
oh, I freaked out. And they were like, because I was in my own home, and they were like, you're in your home, you're in your lounge. I was like, yeah, but how did I get here? And they were like, what are you talking? Because I literally stopped mid-story. I don't even know what I had been talking about a second before. And whatever it was, they said it was a very funny story. And then two of my girlfriends, took me out of the room, took me into a bedroom, and I was like, my last memory, it was daylight. What time is it? What day is it? And that was so scary. That's what got me sober at 24, because I was still very young. That's what pushed me, those types of experiences, because what happened was people started to tell me I had a problem. I've got a beautiful letter written to me by a friend of mine, Zaid, who lived we lived together in London houses. And he actually said, like you're on a party bus and you don't know how to get off. And he said, the story you told me the other night. And of course I was in a blackout. So I'd been honest with him in a blackout about how I was really feeling. And then of course had no memory of it until he presented this letter to me saying, I could lose your friendship right now, but I'm willing to take that risk because you are in serious trouble. And you think that your life's normal because you've got a job and you're going to work and you're living in a flat now, a smaller flat. It wasn't in a party flat anymore, but I was still having all of these situations happen to me. And I can remember going, yeah, thank you. And I kept that letter. So there's definitely something. And I think it was not long later, maybe half a year, that I got sober. But other people were starting to say, Lorraine, you've got a problem. And most of the time I'd go, yeah, I'm really concerned too. But on the inside, I was thinking, I've got a problem. You've got a problem. You snort cocaine, you drink, you drug, so all these
the
people,
ego again, the ego, the pride saying, yes, you've got a problem too. It's like, it hurts to hear that sort of stuff.
Exactly. And then I just had like another weekend where oh no, that's right. First off, my friend came over from New Zealand, and I was joking because she hadn't seen me for years about how AA was the first number in my mobile phone. To this day, no one has owned up with who put that in there. I don't know who put Alcoholics Anonymous's number in my mobile phone, but I joked about it for months. When it gets bad enough, I'll call it, And it, luckily for me, it did get bad enough and I did call it. But it was, so there was a combination of things. There was a combination of people telling me I had a problem, but at the same time partying with me and drinking and drugging with me. So it was kind of, felt hypocritical. Then there was a guy that had actually just rented, one of our flatmates had gone back to South Africa and he'd leased out his room for the month. And that guy, he wasn't like all of us,
So was this in London? Or
this is in London. Okay, yes, I'm in London.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm in London. Yeah. And he stayed for the month and he saw the carnage. He dabbled a very little bit, but he was relatively normal in that respect. He rang up, or I rang him or something, and I said to him, I'm really sorting my life out. I was doing some diet or doing something, I don't know. And he said to me, I'll believe it when I see it. And I said, I was like so offended. What do you mean? And he said, we've had this conversation about 3 or 4 times now, that you're changing your life, that you're getting off the drugs, that you're stopping drinking, and I was like, I had no recollection of these other phone calls that I'd had with him, and so that was a real kind of slap in the face.
It takes a lot of courage, as you said, from these friends as well, doesn't it? Because a lot of people, there's a lot of pushback from people when if you ever do sort of suggest, maybe you should look at this part of your life. Like, you usually get a lot of pushback and resentment, don't you?
You absolutely do. And I was like so nice on the outside, but inside I was raging at them all, like I wouldn't have said to them, how dare you? But on the inside, that's what I was saying.
Well, really, they just cared about you.
They did, exactly. They didn't want to see me, because they would see me on the come downs. They would see me when I would come out of the blackout in fear and terror and not knowing who I was with and how I'd got there. And so it was Easter, actually, Easter in 2001, and we'd been away for the weekend, and I was in and out of blackout all weekend. I'd left a pub because I don't know, I'd taken offense at something and not told anyone I was leaving. I'd got in the car with a strange person. Luckily, he did drop me at the house. He didn't do anything, you know, he could have taken me anywhere.
Oh my God.
All sorts of things. And I came out of that weekend and I rang. I rang that number.
Wow.
And luckily for me, I haven't had a drink since my first meeting.
Wow. And then you were like in your mid-20s then?
I was 24. Yeah.
And so do you think you could have got out of your situation and changed your path had you not gone to AA?
I honestly don't know. I don't think so. I think
what you're doing is singing the praises of AA, because I've spoken to lots of people who say that it's absolutely seminal and critical in their life path.
Yeah. So I put my recovery, my sobriety down to AA. I don't go anymore, but I don't think the way that I was living, the house that I was living in, the party lifestyle that I was living in, I don't think going to see a hypnotherapist like myself or going to see another type of therapist, I don't think it would have been enough. I needed the group. I needed the power of the group, you know.
And what is it specifically about the power of the group that helped you out of the woods to start with?
I think just the accountability. I'm going to go to a meeting, you know, like you turn up, there's other people there, you know, like you've said about me sharing things, you know, honestly, the first meeting I went to, there were a couple of guys that shared about insanity and insane asylums and violence. And I thought, oh, I don't belong here. This is wonderful. And then a young lady shared.
Oh, thank God.
And I was like, yay, I'm not an alcoholic. I can leave, you know. And then a young lady shared, and she shared part of my story. And, you know, I looked up and there was a sign that says you are no longer alone. And I thought, wow, that's exactly how I felt. Because I thought that it was just me, you know, like even though there were people around me that were just as chaotic, I seemed to be more chaotic than everyone else. And, you know, I was the drunkest one and I was the one that was blacking out. So they would do dumb, crazy drunk things, but I was the one that had no memory of it whatsoever. And, you know, sometimes they would say, we're not even going to tell you what you did, Lorraine, because they would just know I couldn't cope with hearing what I'd done the night before. And so, yes, and some of these memories most of these memories have never come back. People would tell me blow by blow what happened, and I still know nothing, gone. And I learned in early recovery that it's the start of Korsakoff syndrome, which is wet brain, where you basically start losing your mind, and people can get stuck in that place. And that terrified me. So fear kept me sober for a while, because I went to these meetings and I heard these really scary alcohol drinking stories that I was like, mine's bad enough. I don't want any of this. But then you get into I got into a group of, you know, London was great because London had a lot of people in their 20s, a lot of, you know, it wasn't just what people think of as an alcoholic, you know, under the bridge, brown paper bag type, you know, it was everything, lawyers, doctors, teachers, you know, normal everyday people. And so I got into a group, you know, like with this women's group, and we'd go out for the meeting, and then we'd go for coffee or dinner. You know, Saturday mornings, we always went to a Saturday morning meeting, and then we went to the cafe for lunch. So it became a real social thing. And then they have some incredible raves, like AA and NA raves, where everyone's sober dancing, and it's amazing. So, you know, I was 24. At first I thought, I'm giving up my life. You know, I'm 24. How come I have to, you know, like you'd hear people in their 40s and 50s, and I'd be like, oh, I'm 24. How come I have to give up so young? And now I just think, oh, thank God, I'm so grateful that I gave up so young. And so, yeah, so it was the group thing, and I just got carried along. You know, someone would say, hey, do you want to go to a meeting tomorrow? And you did. And, you know, and then they'd say, hey, do you want to go to this? And then you end up doing conventions and camps, and, you know, they go to Pontins and Butlins, and they take over the whole place. And there's a great social aspect to the fellowship of you know, the 12-step fellowship that I just loved, and I needed that. If I was trying to do all of that on my own, trying to get sober on my own whilst living in the houses that I was living in with my friends group that was still drinking and taking drugs, I don't think I could have done it.
And then at that point, is that when you started to become a therapist? No, I think that was a lot later, right? Or
no, a lot. Yeah. So I was 24 when I got sober, 40 when I became the therapist.
Wow.
And it's funny because so many people come into 12-step groups and become therapists, and I said I would never do that. And I believed myself.
Right. It just felt a bit cliched to you at the time or
It
something, did it? It just felt
did.
cliched.
It
Right.
did, because you'd see so, like, and you can understand it. I think it was in your episode with your sister, actually, where
Oh,
you said,
thank you so much for listening, by the way. I got your messages the other day. It's really sweet.
oh, I got so much from her. I was like, I was taking notes, like, because she was
Oh,
talking about how she's a note taker. I was like, I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes.
I love my sister so much. She's awesome.
She is. I thought so too. I'm a big fan.
She's a
Yeah.
very honest person like yourself.
Yeah, I loved it. There were so many similarities with what she was saying.
Nice.
And yeah, you asked her something about, or said something about, do a lot of people go into psychology because they've had, issues themselves with, mental health or something? And I was nodding along because I thought that's what you kind of saw in AA. People would come in and then they'd start working for an alcohol service, or they'd get into the field.
Right.
And I was just like, oh, I don't want to spend any more time with, I've spent all my life with alcoholics. Why would I want to do that? But what happened is, I became to be a therapist via a whole different route, and I was no longer going to Alcoholics Anonymous. So it wasn't, about me helping alcoholics. It was a completely different journey to how I got to where I am.
Because you'd sort of mastered alcohol by that stage, or alcoholism, but you still had an addictive personality in other areas of your life, maybe.
That's right. So what happened was I was, drink-free, drug-free. I was even smoke-free by then, but the eating had come and gone. So, so I probably started with sugar when I was, if I look back, sugar was probably my first addiction. And so that came back into my life. And over my life, I was like everything from size 8 to 18. I'm not sure what the American sizes are of that, but like I was, smaller to very large. And I was in a very stressful job. I didn't realize anything about imposter syndrome, or, I'd replaced the alcoholism for workaholism.
Right.
And I got a lot of validation from, doing this big project management job. But I was also, working 60, 70, 80-hour work weeks sometimes.
Wow.
And really pushing myself. And I literally was like work and meetings and eating. And I was really not kind of happy in myself.
The eating was like a release for all the stress, basically.
Yeah, stress eating, emotional eating, comfort eating, all of those words, they're interchangeable, for that type of behavior. There was definitely like addictive, like I can't have alcohol, I can't have most types of sugar, so it's not like some things you can go, okay, I can do that in moderation. So there was a very kind of all or nothing personality. Gotcha. Like I'm all in or I'm not in.
You must have had so much strength to overcome that sort of habitual aspect to your life, because I know exactly how that feels totally. I mean, I wouldn't say like I have addiction across the board, but there's certainly things which I feel very all or nothing about. I get into it. I mean, even gardening. I know nothing about gardening. I've started gardening now. I walk into my garden, 2 hours later, I've got a really sore back because I've just been digging for 2 hours. I almost black out with gardening.
I haven't got the gardening one yet, but you can talk to my partner because he's done 2 nights of 2 hours of gardening this week.
But yeah. So is it with addiction and with your addictions, do you think there's a correlation between them all? It doesn't really matter what the substance is. It's just something in your psychology which makes you want to do this all or nothing thing.
So what I know today, like with the rapid transformational therapy, using hypnosis and the different techniques, if I believe that our mind is like a computer, and everything that I'm doing is a computer program. So I've got a brushing the teeth program, I've got a making the bed program, or a not making the bed program, whichever it is, how to load the dishwasher program, I've got a drinking program, an eating program, a relationship program. Sometimes there's multiple programs. And so for me, I haven't had the therapy that I do on alcohol, but I know that I would go back to high school if I was put into hypnosis and I didn't feel cool. I had glasses, I had a plate, so I had self-esteem issues. The weight was up and down already, fluctuations with puberty, didn't feel as attractive, and alcohol gave me confidence. And so so I drank for confidence, and I feel cool now because I'm hanging out with the cool girls, and I'm smoking. Oh, I'm so cool now.
Right.
And so
Acceptance, basically.
yeah, except, and it's so common how many clients come to me with smoking, drinking, drugs, things like that, and they go back to a scene where I'm with so and so and she's offering me a cigarette, and if I say no, I'm not going to be cool, or I'm not going to be liked, or she's going to, she's not going to want to be my friend, and
Yeah.
things like that, and so
Oh,
we get
and
these.
and also the other thing about kids is I think kids can be more brutal than adults in many respects. You think about certain scenarios at school, and
Oh,
it's almost like
absolutely.
you develop a conscience as you get older, don't you? But it's that perfect storm of feeling insecure yourself and then the brutality of others at times when you don't fit in, when you're not accepted.
And we just want to fit in,
Oh my God,
like
absolutely.
we
I didn't
just,
so basically I was a really late developer and I loved football when I was a kid, but
yeah,
everybody else was going through puberty and I wasn't. And so I just didn't do sport for 2 years because that meant I didn't have to get in the showers. So I'd just get my parents to write me a sick
yeah,
note, a fake sick note, and then I didn't have to go to sports, so I didn't have to deal with it. That's how
yeah.
insecure I was about that whole scenario. It's an awful time of life in some ways, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. And you're in this place and you've already got some programs from when you were younger anyway, because, we get programmed from 0 to 7. We're just little
Mm,
subconscious little sponges picking things up. And, so for me, it's like, I find like the computer, the program in my mind, the eating program was found and then deleted or upgraded, just like we upgrade all the apps on our phones and
gotcha.
laptops, and even my swim watch, gets updated. Why, if we update the software on all of our devices, why wouldn't we update the software of our mind?
Makes sense.
Like
Absolutely.
if I'm seeing a behavior, like even like this lady this week, tiredness, and she thinks she's got a thyroid problem. So I put her into hypnosis, get her to turn her eyes inwards, have a look at the thyroid. Nothing wrong. The thyroid's perfect. The thyroid says there's nothing wrong with me. And then the thyroid says, I'm responding to your words and your language. And because she's saying things like, oh, I really just need a break. I really wish I could just take some time off work, but she's in a job where she can't really just easily take time off work. Her body and mind working together, boom, there's a program. I'm going to give you a thyroid problem. Even though there's nothing wrong with your thyroid, it's going to present like a thyroid problem. You're going to be so tired, you're going to go to the doctor, you're going to get time off, boom, there's your time off.
Wow.
And she's like, so she got to talk to her own mind and body and say, actually, I can do everything that I need to do. What I need is energy, not tiredness. So, so she can start changing her language to go, I can do this job and do this course that she's doing at the same time. Because that's what it was. There was like, oh, I want to do this course all the time. And so it's like, these are just programs. This is our mind is like a computer. If I say to my email, always send Oliver's emails to my podcast folder, that's a direct instruction. So if I say to myself, I'm always going to be addicted to sugar, I've always been addicted to sugar, I'm always going to be fat, boom, there's the program. Change
Wow.
that program. And then once we change, and it's just a language shift, and yes, it takes a bit of time, and that's why you listen to a hypnotic recording that starts reprogramming the brain. But once you see it, you can start to see it and go, there's my program. So this morning I got up at 5:30, had my breakfast, did a 2-kilometer swim. By the time I got to lunch after it, then I went to a meeting. By the time I got to lunch, I was hungry. I'm standing in the queue to buy some food. There's a counter there of, chocolate cakes and brownies and things. My mind says, get the caramel slice. And I can say to my mind, yep, I can see why you want that because you're hungry. So why don't you have your scrambled eggs and hash browns or whatever it was? And if you still want it, you can come back up. I didn't. I had my meal. I had my social connection with my friends. I've rewired the program. I can see the program now. So I could see the old thought.
Awareness, basically. You're aware of what's going on, of the mechanism of it.
And sometimes I'll go, after I've had lunch, I still might feel like I want the chocolate slice or something. And I'll ask myself what that's about. And sometimes I might have some emotional pain and my mind's like, you need some pleasure. And that cake is pleasure. And I'm like, whoa, no, it's not. Because then I've got everything that comes with the cake. And sometimes it's like, well, I'm still hungry. Or sometimes it's like, well, you're really angry and I want to comfort you. All sorts of things might come up and I get to make that choice. And sometimes I've chosen to have that cake or that slice and then gone, well, that wasn't bad. That wasn't good. Because then I've got furry teeth and indigestion and bloated stomach and, all these reactions because my body says, I don't like this stuff. It's the computer mind that says, ooh, have that. because, when I was younger, that made me feel better.
So interesting. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. I know that you're a massive advocate of hypnotherapy. I really
Yes.
want to talk about RTT as well, and really the enlightenment which helped you define RTT. But do you ever not find the solution from hypnotherapy with clients? Is there ever a time where you can't get through that door? Because it sounds like
Yes.
you always feel like you always generally have success in terms of finding out more about the person, unlocking pathways and obstacles in their life, in their subconscious.
Yeah, so I think it depends on each and every single client. So I am like a pit bull. That's what my partner says. You're like a pit bull with hypnosis, because I will keep digging and going like, wow. I'm not gonna, like I hold on, like they grip with their teeth, don't they? I'm like, I'm gonna keep going until I find something.
Tenacity.
Yeah. So yes, but then it comes down to the client. The client's got to want it first off.
So they've got to be open to it.
You've got to be open to it. So some clients will come to me and they think they're open, but there's resistance. So there's different techniques you can do to try and work through the resistance. Sometimes.
And does it usually come down, sorry to interrupt, does it usually come down to one moment in their life that's been crystallized and hidden away? Some moment of trauma?
No, that's what's so amazing about it. Sometimes it's like like people come expecting, am I going to find some deep trauma? Am I going to find something that I didn't know? And yes, sometimes people do. Sometimes I'll say to the client, were you aware of what you've just seen? And they're like, no idea. And other times they're like, yes, I was. I've had clients come to me and go, I had one guy come to me and said, when I was a baby, I was in the war and I was in my mum's arms down underneath the house. When I was 7, this happened. When I was 11, this happened. And I wanted to go to these memories. And so being as I am, I went to those memories because that's what he wanted. But I was like, I'm just going to go one more. And then this one more just like cracked open all this stuff that he wasn't aware of. And it wasn't trauma. It was, like, it's not always trauma. It's everyday things that happen to us in our lives where our little child brain has interpreted it wrong. Okay. So mummy and daddy are fighting and the child goes, I've got to stop this. But I can't because I'm only 4, 5, 6, 7. And they might try something. Some children will try something and it doesn't work. And then, boom, I'm powerless. I'm
not good enough. That's where the I'm not good enough comes from.
Exactly. Sometimes. I'm not good enough. Like some people just go back to like this lady this week. She was like, I've done my homework. I've done my assignment. I'm feeling really proud of my assignment. I take it into school. I get no recognition. Somebody else's assignment gets picked for being the best. And I think mine is the best. And I'm disappointed. I'm not good enough. I try hard. What's the point? What's the point in trying? There, boom, there's a program. And though we go through life going, what's the point? Wow. What's the point? What's the point? And it's not always trauma. It's just where the mind has made decisions. And it's like, I will go for multiple scenes. So, I aim for a session, a minimum of 3 scenes, but some people don't get scenes. Like, so if you say to me, for clients, a therapist's working on me and they say, okay, I'm taking you back to the root cause and the reason for why you overeat, if I was doing that. And then they do a countdown and they go, where are you? Where's your mind taking you? Some questions, whatever. I'm like, nothing. I've got darkness. I don't see my house. I don't see where I grew up. I don't see a memory of, mum making me eat broccoli or anything like this. But all of a sudden my chest might hurt or my shoulder might hurt or my back might hurt. I've had people have fingers twitching and the body speaks. And so then I just get that body part and I'm just like, so I had a whole session on sleep issues for me and indigestion came up. And it was like this indigestion gave all this information about why I wasn't sleeping. So it's not necessarily a visual memory for everyone. Sometimes it's thoughts. But sometimes people can have blocks. People can have resistance. I'll try and work with them to go through the resistance. That can be from a subconscious level of the subconscious mind wanting to keep them safe, that they don't feel they're safe enough to see and cope with it, with whatever they might see. Sometimes it's an ego thing. Even like myself, I would say that I'm a challenging client because I know so much that it's hard for me to get my conscious mind to go away and let my subconscious, because when your conscious mind's doing the work, the subconscious mind doesn't need to do anything.
Right. So it's harder to pull back the curtain with you.
Yeah, because I'm like, and sometimes I'll be like, oh, I would do this differently. And there's the therapist mind popping in, I would use this technique. And it's a challenge to, when you do know stuff and you have a level of self-awareness, sometimes that can be a great thing. And sometimes that can be a challenging thing. I have had people that have had quite emotional sessions, which then scares them. Men, if I would say more so men in my experience, just with the clients that I've seen, because they cried.
Yeah, right.
And,
God forbid.
Yeah. And then I would say I'm an attractive woman. So, for a man to cry in front of an attractive woman, then there's a whole, there could be all that kind of level of stuff going on. And so, then the next session, there's more resistance in the first session because they're scared of, whoa, is that going to happen again?
Right.
Like, am I going to break down? Like
their barriers are even further up the second time
round.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because most people, the barriers come down as you work together and you build up trust. But when you've broken down and cried, and that's not comfortable for you, then you become like, oh, so I wouldn't say that I've had 100% success. I would say that I've given my best in every session that I've done, but then it does come down to each individual person as well, whether they're willing to dig deep and do the work. And sometimes people come out of a session and they go, was that it? My mum said that I had fat knees when I was 12, and so then I became fat, and it was like, yeah, well, because your mind went, oh, if my mum thinks I'm fat, I may as well be fat. Right. It wasn't trauma. It was just mum pointing out that your knees looked a bit chubby today or something, like
drummed into you sort of thing.
Yeah, and these things aren't just one-offs, there's generally a pattern, but the first one can be attached to emotion. If there's emotion attached to it, it's like when we call an imprint, for example, like if somebody gets attacked by a dog, or a dog comes running out and barks, and the mum or dad goes, go away, and the dog runs away, and then they just carry, and they go, you okay? Yep, okay, come on, let's carry on. If mum or dad freaks out, yells at the person who owns the dog, makes this big drama out of it, the kids watching this, they're scared anyway because the dog's run out at them, and then it imprints even deeper.
Sure. Yep.
Like, I mean, this one lady I'm working with on, the fear of sharks, Jaws, the movie Jaws.
That's what did it for her.
Scene after scene after scene, she just kept going back to different scenes in that movie.
Wow.
That embedded in her so deep, the fear of sharks. And we laughed because if you actually saw the Jaws shark at Universal Studios, it's this big mechanical thing that comes out of the water.
And is that part of the therapy? Is that part of the therapy? I mean, how do you? So once you've uncovered this, how do you then sort of how do you then find a solution so somebody can move forward with more happiness and
Yeah, well, funnily enough, it goes back to what you said earlier about fear and love. So the fear of sharks is being overweighed by the love of water and the love of swimming.
Okay.
So we're strengthening. I love swimming. I want to be swimming. I'm choosing to be out in the water. I'm, and all sorts of stuff. If I am safe, I'm calm. Lots of logical things. Like there was one thing that I found. There was one fact that I found, that more people die by coconuts hitting them on the head than they do of shark attacks. So it's trying to get the mind to see that this fear isn't actually based in any fact. And like the harbour that we swim in.
Yeah, you solve her fear of sharks, but she goes away with an obsession with coconuts.
That's right. I'm never going to sit under a coconut tree. Exactly.
With the hypnotherapy, are people aware of what's going on throughout the hypnotherapy, or do they sort of have some kind of blackout themselves, and then are they aware of what's happening the whole time?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So you're aware of what's happening the whole time. You might kind of drift off a little bit, feeling like you're asleep when there's a recording being made for you. You kind of come in and out. But in the session itself, where, I'm saying I'm taking you back to the root cause of your issue, click, where are you? Oh, I'm 5, I'm in this house. You're interacting the whole time. So, I'm asking you questions, I'm probing you, I'm getting you to answer questions. So some people, this works really well for me, rather than just kind of leaving me to delve around into my mind. Give me a question that my mind can answer, or a statement. So I'm the part of Lorraine that is angry right now, and I'm angry because boom, and then the information will come out. So so you're interacting. I find after a session, sometimes people will remember it vividly. Sometimes it'll fade. It might fade immediately. It might be it might be a week later. So sometimes for me, because I want to use I use my sessions as as experiences to help other people, I have to write them down afterwards. I have to write down what came up, because I know that it's just going to go eventually, which is great, which is kind of what you want, because you don't want the negative stuff to be staying there. You've done, there's techniques that I've done to clear the stuff that you might have seen that wasn't so positive. If you've seen the belief that I'm not worthy, then your whole recording is going to be telling you how worthy you are. If you've seen I'm not enough, then you're going to be told you're enough. I'm not lovable, then you're lovable. You don't want to be focusing on keeping that negative going. So you do techniques to say you're letting go of the past. That can be a physical thing for some people, a visual thing. Sometimes it's an audio. You can get people to talk to people under hypnosis, and they're not, the other person's not there, but you can get them to reply, and then you learn all sorts of things. Like, when clients say, oh mum, I didn't feel like I loved you, then the mum comes back in hypnosis and says, oh my God, I loved you so much, I just didn't know how to show you, because I was never shown love, and you get these aha moments, and you're like, so it wasn't that I wasn't lovable, it was just that my mum had this, my dad had that. And one woman this week was like, I was just so stressed, and I'd had such a bad life myself that I didn't know, I just was holding everything together to be put clothes on your back and food on the table. I didn't know how to give you love and emotion stuff as well, because I didn't have that experience, because we can only give what we know.
Absolutely. It feels like RTT, rapid transformational therapy, was a real moment of enlightenment on your journey in your life, your ongoing journey. And so I wonder, how did you find RTT? And the other thing I want to ask about it, because from speaking to you, it feels to me like you're somebody with very strong instinct as well. So how much of RTT is science, and how much of it is, sort of empathy and intuition?
Yeah, well, I think, so I turned 40, and I kind of spiraled down. I had no problem running up to turning 40, didn't think anything of it. Like, everyone was like, oh, you're going to be 40. And I was like, it's just a number. And then I turned 40, and I was like, I'm 40, I'm single, I'm fat, I've got no partner, I'm childless. All these things kind of just imploded on me. And somebody sent me, Marissa Peer, who is the creator of rapid transformational therapy, somebody sent me her video all about, I don't believe that I'm enough. And she tells lots of different stories about that. And I'd started watching it the first time somebody had sent it to me, and then kind of thought, oh, what is this? And turned it off. And,
we do that with so much stuff, don't we? And then you can often find that you're so into it a couple of weeks later.
Exactly. I was like, who is this? Like,
initial resistance.
Yeah. And then, like, about a week later, somebody else mentioned it. And what actually happened was I had overeaten. I'd eaten 3 or 4 ice creams, a whole box of what are called scorched almonds, chocolate covered almonds. Gotcha. And I went to bed feeling violently sick. I couldn't lie on my back. I couldn't lie on my stomach. I was literally in the fetal position on my side. And just kind of, I think at that point, I don't remember clearly, but I think I kind of called out to my higher power, something's got to change, or I can't go on like this, or something like that. And at 3:30 in the morning, my cat at the time, she started crying and wailing in the house, and I was like, what's going on? And I sorted her out, and I got back into bed, and my mind was racing. I hate my job, I'm stressed, I hate my life, and it was just, I couldn't turn it off, and I couldn't sleep. And I was like, I need to watch something. So I turned YouTube on to watch anything. And Marissa Peer's video was the first thing that popped up, because it was the last thing I'd watched, right? Probably.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, whatever. What the hell? I'm just going to watch it. So that was around about 4:30. By 5:30 a.m., I was in my living room with a piece of cardboard, magazines, scissors and glue. I was making a vision board, and I was like, wow. I'm not enough. I'm not enough, like, all my life I haven't believed that I'm enough. And it was literally like a more than a light bulb. It was like an explosion in my brain. And I was like, how? And then she does this thing where you put your left arm out in front of you, and then you spin it around behind you, and you see as far as it can go. And then you bring your arm back, And then you close your eyes and you say to your left arm, you're going to go a third further. You're like rubber, you're like a Barbie arm, you're like spaghetti, you're like jelly. And then you lift your arm again and you turn it around and you're like, oh my God, it's gone a third further. It's like gone further. And I honestly couldn't get it any further beforehand, but I just told my arm to go further and it went further. How did I do that? And she gets you to imagine you're eating a lemon. And you start, salivating, and I even just saying it to you now, my mouth starts to tingle as if I'm about to bite a lemon, because I've done this so many times now. My mind's like, lemon, yuck. And so all of these things that I listened, and I started binge watching her videos, and it was just like so much of what she said. I literally stopped overeating the ice creams overnight without any hypnosis at this point, just with some of the things that she talks about, and about how the mind works, the rules of the mind. Like I say, it's like a computer. She calls it the
reprogramming.
She calls it like the rules of your mind. Like your mind will do exactly what it thinks is in your best interest. So it thought that eating sugar and ice cream was in my best interest, because every time I had pain, my mind went, have some pleasure.
That was your crutch.
Yeah. And then, the mind loves what's familiar. Well, it was familiar for me to work a really long day, pick up 4 ice creams, come home, close the curtains, put some crap television on, and eat and watch TV all night, and the mind takes you from pain and towards pleasure. So, stressful day, that's pain, have an ice cream. Then you have the ice cream, right? And then your mind's like, oh my God, I feel so guilty and ashamed. And
we've all been
and
there.
And then that's pain. So the mind goes, have another ice cream. Right, you're stuck in this program, like going around and around. And so this was like April 2017, early April 2017. And I binge watched her videos. And then I got to a video that said, you can do what I do. I train people to do rapid transformational therapy. And I knew, Oliver, in the pit of my stomach, in my gut, I knew that this was what I was meant to do. Stronger than anything I'd ever, I'm getting goosebumps now as I say it,
beautiful. Knew. Found your calling. You found a purpose, some extra purpose.
Yeah. And I booked my tickets to London. I booked my accommodation. I did follow the process. You had to at the time have a phone call with the team and all these different things that you did, and watch webinars and do all these things. And I did everything. And then I went to the bank and they said, yes, they'd give me a loan. And so I did everything before I told anyone. Now, up until this time in my life, I had spoken to somebody, whether it was an AA sponsor, a parent, a friend, a mentor, a guide, a therapist of some sort, about every decision I'd ever made. And I did all of this. And then I told people I'm going to London to train to be an RTT therapist. It was because
it's always usually the other way around, right? You sort of test the water with people. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but you're actually so passionate about it, and it felt so right from the off.
It did. It just felt
amazing.
Like this. And I did it right. I came back and I went down to 4 days a week and then 3 days a week before I became full-time, But I knew that I could do this. And I don't know how I knew. I honestly don't. And it's been, like you say about the instinct, coming back to that instinct thing. I've learned so much. Yes, I learned so much on the course and all the follow-up, stuff that we do online, and all the masterclasses we have and everything like that, and all, the continued professional development. But I have learned so much just by working with clients and trusting that intuition, trusting that instinct. Sometimes I am in a session and I don't know why I go for a 4th scene, and then boom, something comes up, or sometimes a 5th scene or even a 6th scene before I nail that. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I should be doing here, and then all of a sudden something will just come to me, and I'll try it on for size with the client, and then it's exactly what they needed. Sometimes I might just ask the right question at the right time, and I'm like, where did that question come from? It's some of the things that I do, I haven't been trained in. They just seem to come naturally.
You've got a natural aptitude for it, a natural intuition.
Yeah. And so there's been I've read a lot of, there's a lady, Dr. Janice Webb, who does childhood emotional neglect. So I've read all her books, and, because so many of my clients were coming to me, presenting with emotional neglect. Bruce Lipton's work, I've done a lot of that. Louise Hay. I love Louise Hay and all her affirmations and you can heal your life type stuff. So I bring in what I feel, I do pure RTT in a session, but I will also bring in tools, where I feel that they're needed to help a client from any experience. Sometimes it's my own experience. Sometimes there's real power in being able to put your hand on someone's shoulder if it's a face-to-face session and say, I've been there, you're not alone.
Yeah, amazing. And also, you clearly get a kick from helping people, which is wonderful.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Like when because a lot of people were like, oh, you're just going to be sitting listening to, unhappy people all the time. And I'm like, no, the thing about this is I get people to go back to where they've made all it is where you've made a decision in your life that's become a program. So if that decision is like when I'm old enough, I'm going to eat as much ice cream as I want because mummy won't give me enough ice cream now. Like that is as simple as that. Sometimes I had a client who every time they drove past the dairy, she would look longingly at the dairy and be like, I want an ice cream. But she knew not to ask mum because if they asked, it was a definite no. But sometimes mum would stop and give them an ice cream. Sometimes they never knew when. And every time she went past, she would say things to herself like, when I'm old enough and I've got my own job and I can spend my own money, I'm going to get ice cream every day. And that's it. It's not trauma. It's just mummy wouldn't give me ice cream every day. And it's set up a program, And of course, the mum was doing the right thing not to give ice cream every day, but the child just wants ice cream every day.
Sure.
So it's not necessarily, so it's like, I mean, I love it when I can see the freedom that I help people get. And for me, the biggest learning is that we have all the answers within us, because I used to get scared, like when people would come to me with something I've never heard of, and what do I know about this, and who am I to think that I can work on this with someone? But put them into hypnosis, get them to say, I'm the part of Oliver that is his some kind of physical thing that I've never heard of, and then the answers will come.
That's
and
wonderful.
Then get the client to tell you what they want, and then there's your recording.
Amazing.
Because it's using their words as much as possible.
You're inspirational. I have worked with several of the people I've interviewed in the past, and I'd definitely be interested in doing some sessions with you. I feel like a very happy and fulfilled person. I definitely believe that happiness is a practice, and contentment is a practice. And so all these daily affirmations and positive habits that I've created to try and, supersede the negative ones.
Yes.
But of course, everybody has their issues in their life.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to know if you've heard of Tara Brach.
Yes. Now, why does that name?
She's a spiritual teacher. She has a podcast. I just basically I promote her wherever I possibly get a chance. And you're clearly somebody who likes to have a broad portfolio of tools and sources to draw upon. And she's one of the most wonderful people I've ever heard in my life. The thing about great content for me is that it just feels relevant, whatever the subject. And with her, whatever she's talking about, it feels relevant because it's about the human condition, and we are all human beings. And so she's just a wonderful human being. And whenever I'm feeling angry about a familiar relationship or something like that, or feeling like I'm not enough, I will regularly go back to her. And if you haven't heard any of her podcasts, I definitely recommend you doing so, because she's just wonderful. And yeah, you remind me of her somewhat, because you're such a clear, coherent speaker, and you're clearly a very inspiring person. You've given us some references of tools that you use, but if I was to ask you of one of the most impactful books that you've ever read, apart from what you've already spoken about, is there something that really inspires you that might be of use to me and the audience?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I do like to read. So yeah, to be honest, one of the recent ones, funnily enough, is Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, which I
never read it, but I've
never ever would have thought that I would have read it, but it's helped so much because I was single for 11 years and I'm now, almost 3.5 years in the most loving relationship I've ever been in. It's wonderful, but we do have challenges, beautiful. And a lot of the, and a lot of the challenges have been from the differences of men and women and how we can be different. And so me and my partner are reading this book. I read it and then we're reading it together. So we read a page each and then we talk about it and stuff, and it's wonderful. So that's really helped me in the relationship place. There's a book cool. called The Answer, which I'm trying to get off my shelf without losing my earphones. Oh my God, look at that. I did it. I actually did it without looking. Alan and Barbara Pease, Pease, How to Discover What You Want from Life and Then Make It Happen. My brother actually gave me this. He was reading it and thought that I might like a copy. And it talks in there about what's called the reticular activating system, and which is kind of like, in the subconscious mind. but it talks about it being, it's the brain's command and control center. It's like a GPS. So they give the example of if you say, for example, when I bought my blue Honda Jazz, I'd never seen blue Honda Jazzes before, but now all of a sudden I've bought one and I see them everywhere.
Right, of course, yeah.
That's your reticular activating system. So it
great example.
Filters out all these different things. So if I can, and it's all tied up with beliefs, which then ties up with what I do in RTT and all the belief work and stuff. The RAS works the same way as a heat-seeking missile. So I see numbers everywhere, like 77's my birth year, and I seem to see it everywhere as well, because 7's my favorite number 2 now. But I this morning, I read a reading on page 333. Then I left the meeting and I saw two car license plates with 333 in them. I always see, me and my partner, we always see 1111, it's like the brain is programmed to see these things now.
To filter it out. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. So this, this book, The Answer, goes through, a lot of it's goal setting, and visualization. And they talk about when, I can't remember his name, did the first 4-minute mile, and he visualized himself, seeing himself run the mile in under 4 minutes. And now I can't remember his name right now either. Yeah, and he, he visualized it and visualized it and visualized it, and that's using that RAS, the built-in GPS. So you just, so you decide where you want to go, you input the data. So it's like, that's why it works so well with the hypnotic recordings, because I'm like, well, I'm focusing on what I want. I might not have it now, but the more I focus on it, the more I hear it, then the more the RAS will go to work and find it. So it's like saying to the, or even the universe, you could, it's like, I need a solution for this problem in my life. And it's like, there you go, you've programmed it to look, and then all of a sudden you'll start to see it. And I suppose the way it equates into technology is, you're talking about, needing a new mattress, and then all of a sudden mattress ads pop up in Facebook and Instagram. So it's pretty much like your personal algorithm. Like if we can program it right, then we're going to get, your RAS will pay attention, filter out the irrelevant stuff, and take us towards what we've chosen to believe. So if I've chosen to believe that I'm going to get podcast interviews all the time, and I'm going to get 6 to 8 paying clients a week, and I'm going to get X, Y, and Z, then that's going to start to happen more and more and more. But they also break it down into making manageable goals and how to deal with people when people were against, like one of my favorite chapters was when they were saying, follow through with what you're going to do despite what other people think, do, or say. Right. So I'm going to become an RTT therapist. Some people had some strong opinions about that, but I'm going to follow through despite what they did, and I have. And so it helped me with lots of things like that. And I need to tell my brother thank you, because he probably doesn't know how much it helped me.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's probably one of the unusual books, because it's not like been a therapy book, it's not been a childhood neglect book, it's not been a healing your life book. It's been one of those ones that you're really pleasantly surprised with.
Amazing. And that's it. That's something, it's content that feels relevant, whoever reads it, because it's just a useful message. It sounds a bit like the law of attraction.
Yes. Yeah, I think it probably would be very similar. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to have any problems doing 1 million podcasts and getting 6 to 8 clients a week, the way that you speak, and there is so much compassion in you, as well as that sort of knowledge and the sort of enthusiasm and hunger to continue helping people. I love it. You're a wonderful person.
Oh, thank you.
It's been an hour and a half. It feels like about 3 minutes, but I'm going to let you crack on with your Friday. And
it's Saturday for me.
Oh, really? Of
yes.
course. Yeah. But it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. I'm going to obviously put all the links to you in the show notes on the website for my podcast. But how can people reach out to you simply?
Basically, LorraineMaguire.com is the best one, or they can find me on Facebook or Instagram, Lorraine Maguire Therapy. But my website, lorrainemaguire.com, is the easiest. Then you can book calls with me. You can watch videos that I've done you can even watch a video of me in the shower.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
I can't believe I missed that one.
I know. So I do, in the shower, I do positive affirmations. I call them the shower statements, and I show people, and I over exaggerate it. It's quite, I laugh at myself because I over exaggerate them, but I've got one of me standing in the mirror going, I am enough. Woo. Yeah. I love you. Yeah. And all of this kind of stuff. But I tell you what, it has worked.
Amazing. Shower power.
Shower power, yeah. So I've got them stuck on the side of my shower, and when I'm there, I'm saying them over and over and over again. And the things that I'm saying, using the RAS and all that kind of stuff, it's all starting to come true.
That is absolutely amazing. I love the way that you approach life. It's so good. We need more of you in the world.
Thank you. It has been so wonderful to talk to you.
The Natural High.
Follow us on Twitter at Natural High Club, or go straight to the website, thenaturalhighclub.com. And remember to subscribe to the Natural High podcast through whichever platform you're listening to get every new pod straight to your phone.